What would you do if you discovered that the hungry child begging outside your building was there because of decisions you made? Decisions that killed her father, destroyed her family, and forced a 9-year-old to stand in the freezing cold asking strangers for money to feed her brothers. Would you look away? Or would you finally see what you've been too comfortable to notice? Malcolm Sterling was worth $8.4 billion. He'd built his fortune from nothing. That's the story everyone told. A tech startup in his garage, revolutionary software that changed everything, an IPO that made headlines across the country. By 45 years old, Malcolm was one of the wealthiest men in America. He lived in a penthouse that overlooked downtown Detroit. His name was on the side of a 40-story building in chrome letters you could see from miles away. Sterling Tower. His tower. His city. He'd earned every dollar. That's what he told himself every morning when he looked out his floor-to-ceiling windows at the city spread out below him like a circuit board of lights and money and power. It was a Tuesday in November when Malcolm first saw the girl. He was on his way to lunch, an important lunch, the kind where deals got made over $200 steaks and wine that cost more than most people's rent. His driver Raymond had pulled the black Mercedes up to the curb right on time. The car gleamed in the weak afternoon sunlight. Malcolm was reaching for the door handle when he noticed her. She stood about 10 feet away from the entrance to Sterling Tower, right outside his building, right under his name. She was small, maybe 8 or 9 years old, black. Her hair was pulled back in 2 neat braids. She wore a thin jacket that didn't come close to matching the November cold. Her shoes had holes in them. Actual holes. Malcolm could see her socks through the worn leather. She held a cardboard sign. The sign was made from a flattened cereal box. Someone had written on it in black marker. The letters were careful, neat, like a child had taken time to make each one clear. Hungry. Please help. God bless. Malcolm stopped with his hand on the car door. People walked past the girl without looking. Business people in expensive suits, women in heels, men with briefcases. They moved around her like water flowing around the rock. A few people dropped coins into the coffee can at her feet. The coins made small pinging sounds when they hit the metal. One woman stopped. She was young, maybe 30. She pulled out her wallet, took out a dollar bill, handed it to the girl, and then hurried away. She looked uncomfortable, like she wanted to help but didn't want to be there too long. The girl took the dollar. She said thank you. Her voice was quiet, but clear. Malcolm stood there watching. The girl looked up. Their eyes met. Her eyes were deep brown, steady, proud. She didn't look away. She didn't drop her gaze the way most people did when they made eye contact with someone like Malcolm. Someone rich, someone powerful, someone who could buy and sell entire buildings with a phone call. She just looked at him. It wasn't begging. It wasn't pleading. It was something else. She was daring him to see her. Really see her. Something about that look made Malcolm uncomfortable, made something shift in his chest, made him feel like he was the one being judged instead of the other way around. Sir? Raymond held the car door open. Your reservation is in 15 minutes. We should go. Malcolm got in the car. The leather seats were heated. The interior smelled like expensive cologne and new car. Raymond pulled away from the curb smoothly. No jerks, no sudden movements. Raymond had been driving Malcolm for 12 years. He knew exactly how Malcolm liked things. Malcolm found himself turning around in his seat, looking back through the tinted rear window. The girl was still standing there, still holding her sign. A man in an expensive suit walked past her and deliberately stepped around the coffee can. He pulled his coat closer, like he was afraid of getting too close, like poverty might be contagious. The girl watched him go. Her face didn't change. She just turned back to the sidewalk and held her sign steady. Raymond, Malcolm said suddenly. Stop the car. Turn around. I want to go back. Your reservation. Cancel it. I want to know where that girl goes. Raymond's eyebrows went up, but he didn't argue. He'd worked for Malcolm long enough to know when his boss had made up his mind about something, when there was no point in asking questions. Raymond turned the car around at the next intersection. He drove back past Sterling Tower and parked across the street, far enough away that the girl wouldn't notice them, close enough that Malcolm could see her clearly through the tinted windows. "What are we doing?" Raymond asked carefully. "I want to see what happens. How long she stays there. Where she goes when she's done." "You think she's part of some kind of scam? Adults using kids to get sympathy money?" Malcolm watched the girl through the window. "Maybe. Or maybe she's really hungry." They sat there. Malcolm pulled out his phone and called his assistant. "Cancel my lunch with Davidson. Something came up. Reschedule for next week." He hung up before she could ask questions. They sat there for 40 minutes. Malcolm watched the girl the entire time. Watched her stand in the cold. Watched people ignore her. Watched the ones who didn't ignore her. Watched her carefully count the coins in her coffee can every few minutes. She was tracking something, working toward a goal. This wasn't random. This was systematic. At 1:30, the girl picked up her coffee can. She folded her card. Wouldn't notice, close enough that they wouldn't lose her. The girl moved with purpose. She wasn't wandering. She knew exactly where she was going. She walked through downtown Detroit, past the business district with its gleaming towers and revolving doors, past the newly renovated neighborhood where old warehouses had been converted into loft apartments that rented for $3,000 a month. Then the scenery started to change. The buildings got shorter, older, paint peeled from wooden siding, windows were covered with plywood, sidewalks had cracks running through them like rivers, weeds grew up through the broken concrete. This was the other Detroit. The Detroit that didn't make it into the promotional videos. The Detroit that city officials didn't talk about when they were trying to attract new businesses. The Detroit that people like Malcolm drove past without really seeing. The Detroit that Malcolm's own company had helped create. When Sterling Tech bought a property downtown for their new campus, they displaced hundreds of families, pushed them further out, further into the margins. Malcolm had signed those papers without thinking twice. It was just business, just numbers on a spreadsheet. He'd never thought about where those families went. The girl stopped in front of a corner store. The sign was hand-painted, Martina's Grocery. The paint was faded. One of the windows had a crack running through it, held together with duct tape. The girl went inside. "Park here," Malcolm said. Raymond pulled over to the curb. "Sir, are you sure about this? This neighborhood—" "I know what neighborhood this is." Malcolm got out of the car before Raymond could finish his sentence. The November wind cut through his $2,000 suit like it was paper. He wasn't dressed for this. He stood out like a spotlight. Everyone in this neighborhood would know he didn't belong here. Malcolm crossed the street. He stood outside the grocery store window. Through the glass, he could see the girl at the counter. She was dumping out her coffee can, coins scattered across the counter. She was counting them. Her lips moved as she added up the total. The man behind the counter was older, Latino. He looked tired, like he'd been tired for a long time. He was shaking his head. Malcolm pushed open the door. A bell chimed. The girl looked up. When she saw Malcolm, her eyes went wide. She recognized him from earlier, from outside Sterling Tower. And Malcolm was about to learn something that would change everything he thought he knew about the cost of his success. If you're new to Topcore, we tell the real stories about race, poverty, and power in America. The stories that make you uncomfortable because they're true. Subscribe so you don't miss what happens when Malcolm discovers who this girl really is and why she's hungry in the first place. The grocery store smelled like old produce and cleaning solution. The floor was worn linoleum, cracked in places. The shelves weren't fully stocked. There were gaps where products should have been. Malcolm let the door close behind them. The bell chimed again. The girl stood at the counter, frozen. Her hands were still on the pile of coins she'd been counting. Her eyes were locked on Malcolm. The man behind the counter looked between them, confused, trying to figure out what was happening. "It's not enough," the man was saying to the girl. His voice was gentle, tired. "I'm sorry, mija. I gave you credit last week. I can't keep doing it. I have bills too. The distributor wants cash up front now. I don't have room to give credit anymore." "Please, Mr. Martinez." The girl's voice was small but steady. "I only need bread and peanut butter. My brothers are hungry. I have $4.60. That's almost enough. That's close." Mr. Martinez shook his head. He looked like it hurt him to do it. "The bread is $2.50. The peanut butter is $3.75. That's $6.25 total. You're short $1.65. I can come back tomorrow with more." "You said that yesterday, Imani." Imani. Her name was Imani. "I know, but I'll get it. I promise. I just need a little more time. I want to help you. You know I do. But I can't keep giving credit. I'm barely making it myself." Malcolm stepped forward. "I'll cover the difference." Both of them turned to stare at him. Mr. Martinez looked Malcolm up and down, taking in the expensive suit, the watch that cost more than most cars, the shoes that were custom made in Italy.
Imani's face went through a series of expressions: surprise, suspicion, pride, and finally, underneath it all, desperation. "And whatever else she needs," Malcolm added. He pulled out his wallet. "What do you need? For your family?" Imani's jaw tightened. She looked at Mr. Martinez, then back at Malcolm. She was trying to figure out if this was real, if she could trust it. "I need bread and peanut butter and milk and cereal for my brothers," she said carefully, like she was afraid the offer would disappear if she asked for too much. "And if there's enough, rice and beans, and maybe eggs." "Get it all," Malcolm said to Mr. Martinez. He pulled out $200 bills and put them on the counter. Imani's eyes went huge. "That's too much." "Then get enough for the week, for your whole family. Get whatever you need." Mr. Martinez looked at the money, then at Imani, then back at Malcolm. Finally, he nodded. He started gathering items from the shelves: bread, peanut butter, a gallon of milk, a box of cereal, rice, beans, a carton of eggs. He moved slowly, like he was still trying to figure out what was happening. Malcolm looked down at Imani. "What's your name?" She hesitated. "Imani." "Imani, I'm Malcolm. Why are you buying groceries instead of your parents?" Her face closed off, like a door slamming shut. "My mama works. She can't always get to the store." "What about your father?" "He's gone." Her voice went completely flat, empty. "Can I have my groceries now?" Mr. Martinez had filled 3 plastic bags. He handed them across the counter. They looked heavy. Imani could barely carry all 3. She had to shift them around to get a grip. "Where do you live? I'll give you a ride. My car is right outside." "No." The word came out quick, defensive. "I can walk. Thank you for the food." She headed for the door. The bags knocked against her legs as she walked. She was struggling with the weight, but she didn't ask for help. Malcolm followed her outside. Across the street, Raymond stood beside the Mercedes, watching, ready to step in if Malcolm needed him. "Imani, wait. At least let me help you carry those." "I don't need help." She turned to face him. The bag swung heavily in her hands. "I'm not a charity case. I was going to pay for it myself. I just needed more time. I would have gotten the money." "I know. I saw you working for it, outside my building." Her chin lifted. Her eyes flashed. "It's not begging. It's asking for help. There's a difference." "What's the difference?" "Begging is when you're helpless, when you're just waiting for someone to save you. Asking for help is when you're trying, when you're doing everything you can but you need a little bit more. I'm trying. For my brothers. They're 6 and 4.
They don't understand why there's no food in the house. They just know they're hungry. But I can fix it. I've been fixing it. Malcolm felt something crack inside his chest. This child, this little girl who should have been in school right now, who should have been playing with friends or worrying about homework or thinking about what she wanted to be when she grew up. Instead, she was carrying the weight of feeding her family on her 9-year-old shoulders. "How old are you?" he asked quietly. 9. "And you do this every day? Stand outside in the cold asking people for money so you can buy food?" Her jaw tightened. "Not every day. Sometimes I watch Mr. Chen's store down the street and he pays me $5. Sometimes I return shopping carts at the big grocery store on Jefferson and they give me a few dollars. Sometimes I do this. Whatever I can do. Whatever works." "Where is your mother right now?" "Working. She cleans offices at night downtown. And in the morning, she works at the Grandview Hotel. And in the afternoon, she..." Imani stopped, shook her head. "She works hard. She works all the time. But it's not enough. It's never enough. The bills keep coming and the rent keeps going up. And the money never covers it all. What's your last name, Imani?" She looked at him with those steady, too old eyes. Eyes that had seen too much. Eyes that understood things a 9-year-old shouldn't have to understand. "Why do you want to know?" "Because I want to help. Really help. Not just buy groceries one time. I want to make sure you and your brothers have what you need." "Why?" The question was direct, challenging. She wasn't going to accept easy answers. Malcolm didn't have a good answer ready. Why did he want to help? Was it guilt? Was it because seeing her poverty made him uncomfortable? Was it because helping one hungry child would make him feel like his billions of dollars actually meant something beyond the numbers in his bank account? "Because it's not right," he finally said. "A 9-year-old shouldn't have to stand in the cold begging for money to buy food. Not in the richest country in the world. Not in a city where people like me live in pet houses and eat at restaurants that charge $200 for a steak." "But we do," Imani said simply. "Lots of us do. Kids like me. Families like mine. We're everywhere. Standing on corners. Asking for help. Trying to survive." She looked directly into his eyes. "You just don't see us." She turned and started walking. The grocery bags swung at her sides, too heavy for a child that size, but she carried them anyway. Malcolm stood there on the cracked sidewalk in his expensive suit and watched her go. She was right. He didn't see them. He drove past people like Imani every day in his Mercedes with the tinted windows. He lived 40 stories above them in his penthouse with the heated floors and the view of the city. He made decisions that affected thousands of lives without ever seeing their faces, without ever knowing their names. He built an empire on the idea that he'd earned everything through hard work and talent. But what if his success had come at someone else's expense? What if the towers he built had pushed families like Imani's further into poverty? Malcolm pulled out his phone. He scrolled through his contacts and found Rebecca Torres, his director of community relations, one of the few people who would tell him the truth even when he didn't want to hear it. She answered on the second ring. "Malcolm, what's up?" "Rebecca, I need you to do something for me. I need you to find out everything you can about a girl named Imani. I don't have her last name yet. 9 years old, black, lives somewhere in the east side near Martina's grocery. Mother works multiple jobs, father is deceased, 2 younger brothers." "What's this about?" "Just find her. Find out who she is, where she lives, what her situation is. I need to know everything." "Malcolm, please, Rebecca, just do this for me. I'll explain later." He hung up. Raymond had crossed the street. "Sir, are you ready to go back?" "Yeah," Malcolm said. "Let's go." But as he drove back toward downtown, Malcolm couldn't stop thinking about Imani's eyes, about the way she'd looked at him, about what she'd said. "You just don't see us." 3 hours later, Rebecca called back. "I found her," Rebecca said. Malcolm was in his office, 40 floors up, looking out at the city. "Tell me." Imani Davis, age 9, lives at 847 Woodward Avenue, apartment 3C. Mother is Delilah Davis, age 32. Two younger brothers, Jerome, age 6, and Caleb, age 4. Father deceased 2 years ago. How did the father die? There was a pause on the other end of the line. A pause that made Malcolm's stomach drop. Rebecca, how did he die? Malcolm, her voice was careful. You're not going to like this. Tell me. Industrial accident. Warehouse collapse. East side of Detroit. Malcolm's hand tightened on the phone. What warehouse? Another pause. Rebecca, what warehouse? It belonged to Sterling Properties, your real estate division. The office suddenly felt too small, too hot. Malcolm walked to the window, pressed his hand against the cold glass. What was the father's name? Marcus Davis. He was a foreman at the warehouse. According to the records I found, there had been complaints about the building's structural integrity for months before the collapse. Marcus Davis filed 3 separate formal reports about safety concerns. Cracks in his support beams, water damage to the foundation. All 3 reports were ignored by the property management company. Malcolm closed his eyes. Then the roof collapsed during a shift change. 3 men died. Marcus Davis was one of them. What was the settlement? $50,000 per family. Standard liability payout. The families had to sign non-disclosure agreements as part of accepting the settlement. $50,000. For a man's life. For a father. For a husband. Malcolm had probably spent more than that on the art in his penthouse. Is there more? He asked quietly, because he could hear in Rebecca's voice. There was more. Delilah Davis works 3 jobs. Morning shift at the Grandview Hotel, afternoon shift at Quick Mart on Jefferson, night shift cleaning office buildings downtown. Combined, she makes approximately $24,000 a year. $24,000 a year working 3 jobs. That was poverty. That was barely surviving. That was why Imani was standing in the cold asking strangers for money to buy bread and peanut butter. After rent, Delilah has about $600 a month for everything else. Food, utilities, clothing for 3 kids, medical expenses. The math doesn't work, Malcolm. There's no way to make it work. What about government assistance, food stamps, welfare? She's applied 4 times in the past 2 years. Denied every time. She makes $20 over the income threshold. $20 a year too much to qualify for help, but $18,000 a year too little to actually survive. Malcolm felt sick. This was the gap, the place where people fell through, where they worked themselves to death and still couldn't make it, where their children went hungry despite their mother working 3 jobs. There's one more thing, Rebecca said. What? The apartment building where they live, it used to be low-income housing. The building was bought by a development company 18 months ago. Since then, the rent has been increased incrementally, pushing out the current tenants so they can bring in higher-paying renters. Delilah's rent has gone from $450 a month to $850. In 6 more months, it's scheduled to increase to $1,200. She won't be able to afford it. Malcolm's reflection stared back at him from the window. A man in an expensive suit, a billionaire, a success story. Rebecca, who bought the building? Silence. Rebecca, who bought that building? A Sterling Property subsidiary. Different name on the paperwork, but it's yours, Malcolm. It all traces back to Sterling. Malcolm Sterling, self-made billionaire, technology genius, philanthropist, man who'd earned every dollar, had killed Imani's father, and now he was pricing her family out of their home, while paying her mother poverty wages at a hotel he owned, while she sat outside his building begging for money to feed her brothers. And he'd driven past her every single day without seeing her. Until today. Malcolm made the call at 7 o'clock that same evening. He was still in his office, still staring out the window at the city below, at the light spreading out like a map of wealth and poverty, success and failure, the visible and the invisible. Rebecca, I need you to set up a meeting with Delilah Davis. Malcolm, she works 3 jobs. She doesn't have time for meetings. Then I'll meet her whenever she has time. Between shifts, before work, after work, At midnight, if that's what it takes. Make it happen. Rebecca sighed. What are you planning to do? I'm going to fix this. You can't fix systemic poverty by helping one family. Watch me. It took Rebecca 2 days to arrange it. Delilah Davis agreed to meet Malcolm at 6 o'clock on Thursday morning. The only time she had available was a 30-minute window between her hotel shift ending and her quick March shift beginning. 30 minutes. That's all the free time she had in an entire week. They met at a diner 2 blocks from the Grandview Hotel, the kind of place that served coffee that tasted like it had been sitting on the burner since yesterday, and eggs that came from a carton. But it was cheap, and it was open early. Malcolm arrived at 5:45. He sat in a booth by the window, ordered coffee he didn't drink, watched the sky lighten from black to gray through the smudged glass. At exactly 6 o'clock, the door opened. Delilah Davis walked in. She was small, thin, the kind of thin that came from not eating enough for too long. She wore the Quick Mart uniform under a winter coat that had seen better years. The coat was clean but worn. Patches on the elbows, a button missing. Her face was pretty. Or it would have been if it wasn't so worn down by exhaustion, by stress, by too many sleepless nights and too many impossible choices. She saw Malcolm and stopped. Her eyes went cold. Not angry, not yet, just cold. Empty, like she'd run out of the energy it took to feel things. She walked to the booth, stood there looking down at him. "You're Malcolm Sterling." It wasn't a question. "Yes," Malcolm said. "The billionaire who killed my husband." The other people in the diner turned to look. A construction worker at the counter, a waitress refilling coffee, an old man reading a newspaper in the corner booth. Everyone was staring now. Malcolm felt every eye in the room. "Yes," he said quietly. "I am. Please sit down." "Why should I?" "Because I want to make this right." Delilah laughed. It was a sharp sound. Bitter. "You can't bring Marcus back." "No, I can't. But I can try to help you and your children." She stood there for another long moment. Fury and grief and bone-deep exhaustion fighting for control of her face. Finally, she sat down. 5 minutes. That's all you get. I have to be at work by 6:30. Malcolm reached into his jacket pocket. He pulled out an envelope. Plain white, unsealed. He pushed it across the table. "This is a check for $500,000. No strings attached. No non-disclosure agreement. No contracts. Just help for you and your children." Delilah stared at the envelope like it was a snake. She didn't touch it. "Why?" "Because I met your daughter. Because she was standing outside my building in the cold with a cardboard sign begging for money to feed her brothers. Because a 9-year-old child shouldn't have to do that." Delilah's voice cracked. "She's not supposed to be doing that. I told her to stop. I told her I'd figure it out. But she's stubborn, just like her father. She thinks she can fix everything if she just works hard enough. If she just tries hard enough." "She got that from you too, I think." Delilah's eyes flashed. The coldness turned to fire. "Don't you dare. Don't you dare sit there in your expensive suit with your expensive watch and pretend you know anything about me or my family. You're right. I don't know you. But I know the system that killed your husband. I know the system that's starving your children. And I helped build that system. So this is guilt money." Malcolm didn't look away. "Yes, it is. But it's also real money that could help you. That could mean you don't have to work 3 jobs just to barely survive. I don't want your charity." "It's not charity. It's restitution." Malcolm leaned forward. "Your husband died because my company ignored safety violations. You're being pushed out of your home because my company bought your building and keeps raising the rent. Your daughter is begging for food because my company pays you poverty wages at the hotel. This isn't charity. This is me acknowledging what I've done, what my success has cost people like you." Delilah's hand trembled as she reached for her coffee cup. She took a sip, set it down. A single tear rolled down her cheek. She wiped it away angrily. "You think money fixes this?" she whispered. "You think you can just write a check and erase what happened? Bring back the years I've lost? The nights I've spent lying awake trying to figure out how to feed my kids? The times I've had to tell Jerome and Caleb there's no food until tomorrow?" "No, I don't think it fixes anything. But I think money might mean you don't have to work 3 jobs. I think it might mean Imani can be a kid again instead of a provider. I think it might mean your sons don't go to bed hungry." Delilah was quiet for a long moment. "I used to have dreams," she said finally. "Did you know that? Before Marcus died, I was taking nursing classes at community college. I was going to be an RN, make good money, help people. I was good at it too. I loved it. Learning about the human body, how to help people heal, how to make a difference." She stared down at her coffee. "Then Marcus died and the bills came, and I had to drop out. I had to take any job I could find, any job that would hire me. 3 minimum wage jobs still don't add up to what I could have made as one nurse. Not even close. You could go back to school. With this money, you could finish your degree. You could... And who watches my kids while I'm in class?" Delilah's voice was sharp. "Who feeds them breakfast? Who makes sure they do their homework? Who puts them to bed? Who stays home when they're sick? Who goes to parent-teacher conferences? I can't be in 2 places at once. I can barely sleep 4 hours a night as it is." Malcolm had no answer. This was the reality his billions had built. A reality where a talented woman with dreams had to abandon everything just to survive. Where children went hungry while people like him ate at restaurants that charged $200 for a steak. Where working 3 jobs wasn't enough to keep a family fed and housed. "I can do more than just give you money. I can change the policies at Sterling Tech. Raise the minimum wage to $25 an hour for all employees. Give full benefits to part-time workers. Stop the rent increases at your building. Reform the safety protocols at all our properties so what happened to Marcus never happens again." Delilah looked at him with hollow eyes. Eyes that had seen too much, lost too much, survived too much. "You could do all that anyway. You don't need my permission. You don't need to feel guilty about my daughter standing in the cold. You're a billionaire. You have the power to change lives with a single signature. With 1 phone call. Why haven't you?" The question hit Malcolm like a fist to the chest. "Because I didn't see it. I was so focused on profit margins and stock prices and quarterly earnings that I didn't see the real cost, the human cost. People like you, like Marcus, like Imani. Now you see it. So what are you going to do about it?" "Everything I can, starting with you." Delilah finally picked up the envelope. She opened it slowly, pulled out the check, looked at the number written there. Her hand started shaking. "This is more money than I've made in 10 years, she whispered. "It's not enough. It'll never be enough. But it's a start." She looked up at him. "What do you want from me in return?" "Nothing, except maybe let me know if it helps, if there's more I can do." "Why do you care?" "Because I met your daughter. Because she was standing outside my building in the cold with a cardboard sign begging for money to feed her brothers. Because a 9-year-old child shouldn't have to do that. I need to get to work." "You could quit. At least one of the jobs, maybe 2. With this money, I'll quit when I'm ready. On my terms. Not because some billionaire decided to play savior to make himself feel better." She stood up. Malcolm stood too. "Ms. Davis..." "Delilah, wait." She paused, looked at him. "Thank you," Malcolm said, "for agreeing to meet me, for accepting the help, for raising a daughter brave enough to stand in the cold and ask for help when she needed it." Delilah's expression softened, just slightly, just for a moment. "Imani's special. She's going to change the world someday, if the world doesn't crush her first. I won't let that happen. You can't stop it. You're just one person. I'm one person with $8 billion and a lot of influence. That has to count for something. Delilah almost smiled. Almost. We'll see. She walked out of the diner, into the gray Detroit morning, back to her shift at Quick Mart, where she'd stand behind a register for 6 hours, making $9 an hour, selling lottery tickets and cigarettes to people who were struggling just like her. Malcolm sat back down. He stared at his cold coffee for a long time. Then he pulled out his phone and started making calls. Malcolm didn't hesitate. When? Tonight? Around 6? I'll be there. He drove himself. No driver, no security. Just him in a regular car that didn't scream wealth and power. The neighborhood looked different in the evening light. Not better exactly, but different. The apartment building had fresh paint, the stairs had been repaired, new windows had been installed. Sterling Properties had put real money into renovations instead of just raising rent and ignoring maintenance. Delilah met him at the door. She looked different too. Rested, healthier. Her face wasn't so worn down. She was wearing scrubs, clean, professional, navy blue with white trim. Nursing school? Malcolm asked. Delilah smiled, a real smile. Part-time online classes. I quit the hotel job and the night cleaning. I'm just working at Quick Mart now during the boys' school hours. The rest of the time I'm studying or with my kids. I'm glad. She led him inside. The apartment was small, but it looked like a home. Toys on the floor, drawings taped to the walls, a backpack by the door, dishes drying in the rack by the sink. Imani was sitting at the kitchen table doing homework. When she saw Malcolm, she stood up. She looked different too. Fuller, healthier. Her clothes were new. Her shoes didn't have holes. Her hair was pulled back in the same 2 braids, but they looked neater, cared for. But her eyes were the same, steady, proud, seeing him. "Hi," she said. "Hi, Imani. Mama said you're the reason things got better." Malcolm shook his head. "I'm the reason things were bad in the first place. I'm just trying to fix what I broke." Imani smiled. "That's what Mama said you'd say." She walked over to him, held out something. It was a drawing, done in crayon on construction paper. It showed a tall building, Sterling Tower, and a small girl standing in front of it. Between them was a bridge made of rainbow colors. "What's the bridge?" Malcolm asked. "It's seeing each other," Imani said simply. "You were up there, and I was down here, and we couldn't see each other. But then you looked, and when you look, you can build bridges." Malcolm felt tears sting his eyes. This 9-year-old girl who'd been hungry just 3 months ago was teaching him about humanity. "Can I keep this?" "That's why I made it for you. To remember. I won't forget. I promise." Delilah brought out cookies and milk. Homemade cookies. The apartment smelled like vanilla and sugar. Like a home that had room for baking now. Room for small luxuries that hadn't been possible 3 months ago. They sat at the kitchen table. Malcolm, Delilah, and Imani. 2 boys ran in from the bedroom. Jerome and Caleb, 6 and 4 years old. They stopped when they saw Malcolm. "Who's that?" Caleb asked. "That's Mr. Sterling. He's the man who helped us." Jerome looked at Malcolm with serious eyes. "You're the one who gave Mama money?" "I helped your family, yes." "Thank you," Jerome said. Very formal, very serious. Like he'd been taught to be polite to important people. "You're welcome." The boys grabbed cookies and ran to their room. Delilah smiled after them. They're doing better. Jerome's teacher says he's more focused in class now. He was having trouble concentrating before. Hard to focus on schoolwork when you're hungry. Malcolm felt that familiar crack in his chest. "I'm glad they're doing better." They talked for an hour about normal things. About Imani's school, about Delilah's nursing classes, about Jerome's soccer team, and Caleb's obsession with dinosaurs. Human things. When Malcolm stood to leave, Imani walked him to the door. "Mr. Sterling." "Yes? Are you going to keep helping people?" "I'm trying." The changes at Sterling Tech are helping thousands of families now. That's good, but there's more. Malcolm looked down at her, this 9-year-old with eyes that saw too much. What do you mean? There's a lot of us. People who need to be seen. People who need help. I know some of them. Families on our street. Kids at my school. They're still hungry. Still struggling. What do you want me to do? I don't know, but I can show you, if you want. I can show you the people you're still not seeing. Malcolm thought about his schedule. The meetings, the conferences, the speaking engagements. Everyone wanted to know how he'd transformed Sterling Tech, how he'd made ethics profitable. But they were all talking to him from conference rooms and stages, not from kitchen tables in apartments that used to be too hungry for cookies. Okay, Malcolm said. Show me. Tomorrow? After school? I can take you around the neighborhood. I'll be here. Imani held out her hand. Malcolm shook it. But you have to promise something, she said. What? You have to really listen, not just throw money at problems. You have to listen to what people need, what they actually need, not what you think they need. Malcolm nodded. I promise. The next day, Malcolm came back at 3:30. Regular car, regular clothes. Jeans and a sweater, no suit, no tie. Trying not to stand out. It didn't work. He still stood out, but at least he was trying. Imani was waiting outside. She led him down the street. See that house? She pointed to a building with boarded windows. Mrs. Chen lives there with her 4 grandkids. Their parents died in a car accident. She's 70 years old and she's raising 4 kids on Social Security. She needs help, but she's too proud to ask. They walked further. That's Mr. Washington. He's a veteran. He can't work because of his back. He's been waiting 2 years for disability approval. He eats 1 meal a day so his wife can eat. Another block. That's the Rodriguez family. 7 people in a 2-bedroom apartment. The dad works construction, but it's seasonal. Winter months, they have nothing. Malcolm listened. Really listened. He took notes on his phone. Names, situations, needs. By the time they got back to Imani's building, Malcolm had a list of 30 families. I can help all of them, he said. I can write checks. No. Malcolm stopped. No? That's not listening. That's just throwing money. You said you listen. I am listening. You told me they need help. I told you their situations. I didn't tell you what they need. You need to ask them. Talk to them. Find out what would actually help instead of assuming. Malcolm felt embarrassed. She was right. He was already doing exactly what she'd warned him not to do. Okay. Will you help me? Introduce me to them? Only if you promise to ask questions instead of making decisions for them. I promise. Over the next 2 weeks, Malcolm met with every family Imani had shown him. He met Mrs. Chen. She didn't want money. She wanted help navigating the guardianship paperwork for her grandkids. Legal help. Someone to explain the forms that didn't make sense. He met Mr. Washington, who didn't want charity. He wanted someone to help him fight the VA system that kept denying his disability claim. He met the Rodriguez family, who didn't want handouts. They wanted jobs that paid living wages year-round. Each family taught Malcolm the same lesson Imani had been trying to teach him. Listening was harder than giving. Understanding was more complicated than solving. Real help required relationship, not just resources. Malcolm hired lawyers to help with guardianship papers. He hired advocates to fight disability denials. He connected people with year-round jobs at Sterling Tech. He did what they asked for, not what he assumed they needed. And slowly, the neighborhood started to change. But not everyone was happy about it. Malcolm was in his office one Tuesday afternoon when Rebecca came in looking worried. We have a problem. What kind of problem? Community pushback about your involvement in the East Side neighborhood. Malcolm frowned. Pushback? I'm helping people. That's the problem. Or at least that's what they're worried about. Rebecca pulled up a news article on her tablet. There's a community meeting tonight. They're discussing concerns about gentrification. Gentrification. I'm not gentrifying anything. I'm helping people their homes. I know that. You know that. But think about how it looks.
Billionaire suddenly takes interest in poor neighborhood, starts fixing up buildings, bringing in resources. History says that's usually the first step before property values rise and longtime residents get pushed out. Malcolm felt sick. That's not what I'm doing. I believe you, but they don't know you. All they see the rich white guys showing up in their neighborhood. They've seen this story before. It never ends well for them. What do I do? Go to the meeting, listen, let them tell you their concerns. The meeting was at a community center 3 blocks from Amani's apartment. Malcolm arrived early. The room was already filling up. 50 people, 60, 70, all of them looking at him when he walked in. He found a seat in the back, tried to be invisible. Imani slipped into the seat next to him. You came? Of course I came. Good, because they're angry, and you need to hear why. The meeting started. A woman named Patricia Johnson stood at the front. She was maybe 50, strong voice, clear eyes. We all know why we're here. Malcolm Sterling has been spending time in our neighborhood, helping people, or so he says. We need to talk about what that really means. Murmurs of agreement. I've lived here for 30 years, Patricia continued. I've seen this before. Rich people discover our neighborhood. They call it urban renewal. They call it revitalization. They say they're helping. Then property values go up, taxes go up, rent goes up, and suddenly we can't afford to live in the neighborhood we built. More murmurs, louder now. I'm not saying Mr. Sterling has bad intentions, but intentions don't matter when the result is the same, when we get pushed out of our homes. A man stood up. My sister lives in the building Sterling Properties renovated. They fixed it up nice. New windows, new paint. Then they raised the rent 30%, called it fair market value. She can't afford it. She's got 6 months before they price her out. Malcolm's stomach dropped. He'd ordered those renovations. He'd thought he was helping. That's not supposed to happen, he said, standing up. I gave specific orders. Sit down, Patricia said. Not mean, just firm. This isn't your turn to talk. This is your turn to listen. Malcolm sat down. For the next hour, he listened to people who'd been promised help before and got displacement instead, to families who'd watched their neighborhoods transform into places they could no longer afford, to the fear that Malcolm's help was just the beginning of the end. When the meeting finally ended, Malcolm felt smaller than he had in years. Imani walked him outside. You understand now, she asked. I think so. I thought fixing the buildings was helping, but I made them nicer without protecting the people who live there, so now they're going to be forced out. You meant well, but you didn't ask. You didn't listen to what could go wrong. How do I fix this? I don't know. That's something you have to figure out, with them, not for them. Malcolm drove home that night thinking about everything he'd heard. He called an emergency meeting with his property management team the next morning. Every building we own in that neighborhood, he said. I want rent caps, legal protections, long-term leases for current tenants at current rates, no loopholes, no workarounds. Anyone who's living there now gets to stay there at a price they can afford. Period. That's going to cost. I don't care what it costs. Make it happen. He called Patricia Johnson that afternoon. I heard you at the meeting. You were right. I was making decisions without understanding consequences. I want to fix that. I want to create protections for tenants, but I need help. I need people who know this community to tell me what would actually work. Silence on the other end of the line. Why should we trust you? Because I'm asking instead of telling. And because I'm willing to put legal protections in writing, real protections, binding contracts. Patricia was quiet for a long moment. Okay, we'll meet. But we're bringing lawyers, and we're not agreeing to anything without reading every word. Good. You shouldn't. 2 months later, Malcolm stood in the same community center. This time, he wasn't in the back row. He was at the front table with Patricia, 3 community lawyers, and a stack of legal documents. These are tenant protection agreements, Patricia explained to the room. Rent caps for 10 years, right of first refusal as buildings are sold, relocation assistance if anyone has to move, community oversight board to approve any major changes. She looked at Malcolm. Mr. Sterling has agreed to all of it, legally binding, not just a promise. The room was silent. Then someone started clapping.
then another person, then the whole room. Malcolm didn't feel like he deserved the applause. He'd almost made the same mistakes everyone else had made. The only difference was Imani had called him out before it was too late. After the meeting, Imani found him outside. "You did good," she said. "I almost didn't. I almost destroyed the neighborhood trying to save it. But you didn't. You listened. You changed. That's what matters. Will you keep helping me? Keep telling me when I'm wrong?" She smiled. "Only if you promise to keep really listening." "I promise." She held out her hand. Malcolm shook it. But as they stood there, Delilah came running up. Her face was pale, scared. "Imani, we need to go. Now." "What's wrong?" "It's Jerome. The school called. He collapsed during recess. They're taking him to the hospital." Malcolm drove them to the hospital. Delilah sat in the front seat, her phone pressed to her ear, trying to get information from the school nurse. Imani sat in the back, silent, her hands clenched in her lap. "They said he just collapsed," Delilah kept saying. "He was playing soccer and then he just fell down. They can't wake him up properly. He's conscious but confused." Malcolm's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Which hospital?"
Detroit Medical Center. Emergency room. Malcolm knew the route. He'd driven past it 1,000 times. Never been inside. Now he was racing there with a sick 6-year-old boy who might be his responsibility. Not legally, but morally. If something was wrong with Jerome, if there was a medical problem they'd missed because Delilah couldn't afford regular checkups, because she'd been too busy working 3 jobs to take her kids to the doctor unless it was an emergency. That was on Malcolm, too. They got to the emergency room in 12 minutes. Delilah ran inside. Imani followed. Malcolm came after them, feeling useless. A nurse led them back to a room. Jerome was lying on a bed that looked too big for his small body. He was awake, but pale, scared. An IV was in his arm. Monitors beeped around him. "Mama," he said when he saw Delilah. She ran to him, held his hand. "I'm here, baby, I'm here." A doctor came in, young, maybe 30. She had kind eyes but a serious expression. "Mrs. Davis, I'm Dr. Patel. I've been examining Jerome. Can you tell me about his medical history?" Delilah's voice shook. "He's been healthy, no major problems. He gets tired sometimes, but I thought that was normal for a 6-year-old. "How often does he get tired? More than other kids his age?" I don't know. I work during the day. I don't always see him playing with other kids." "Has he been eating normally?" "Yes. Well, he picks at his food sometimes, but he eats." Dr. Patel made notes. "We're running blood tests. His initial workup shows some concerning numbers. His blood sugar was very low when he came in. That's likely what caused the collapse." "Diabetes?" Delilah's face went white. "Possibly, or it could be something else. We'll know more when the full panel comes back. But I need to ask, when was his last checkup?" Delilah looked down. 2 years ago, before my husband died. We didn't have insurance for a while. And then when I got insurance again through work, it had such a high deductible that I couldn't afford to take them unless it was an urgency." "I understand. This isn't about judgment. I need to know the full picture so I can help him." Malcolm stepped forward. "Whatever test he needs, whatever treatment, I'll cover it. All of it. Cost isn't a factor." Dr. Patel looked at him. "And you are?" "A friend of the family. Please, do whatever you need to do for him." "We will, but I need parental consent for treatment." "Mrs. Davis?" "Yes, whatever he needs. Please, help him." Dr. Patel nodded. "We're admitting him overnight for observation and to run a full diagnostic panel. Once we know what we're dealing with, we'll create a treatment plan." She left. Delilah sank into the chair next to Jerome's bed. She was crying silently, trying not to scare him. Imani stood on the other side of the bed, holding her brother's other hand. Caleb, who had been picked up from daycare by a neighbor, was brought in by Delilah's friend 20 minutes later. He climbed onto the bed next to Jerome. "Are you sick?" "A little bit. But the doctor's going to fix me." Malcolm stood by the door, feeling completely helpless. He could buy buildings. He could change policies. He could write checks for millions of dollars. But he couldn't fix this.
He couldn't make Jerome's blood sugar normal, couldn't erase the 2 years without checkups, couldn't go back in time and make sure this family had access to healthcare before it became an emergency. Hours passed. The blood test came back. Dr. Patel returned with results. Jerome has type 1 diabetes. His blood sugar dropped dangerously low today because his body isn't producing enough insulin. The good news is, this is manageable. With proper treatment, he can live a completely normal life. What does treatment look like? Delilah asked. Insulin injections, blood sugar monitoring multiple times a day, careful diet management, regular checkups with an endocrinologist. It's a lot to manage, but we have resources to help you learn. How much will all that cost? Dr. Patel hesitated. With insurance, it depends on your plan. Without insurance, insulin alone can cost several $100s a month. Monitoring supplies, doctor visits, it adds up quickly. I'll cover it, Malcolm said immediately. No. Delilah's voice was sharp. Everyone turned to look at her. No, she said again. You can't just pay for everything forever. What happens when you get tired of helping? What happens when you move on to the next charity project? My son has a condition that needs lifelong treatment. I can't build his health around your guilt. The words hit Malcolm like a slap. She was right. You're right, he said quietly. I'm sorry. I'm still trying to solve problems with money instead of actually fixing the systems that create them. Delilah wiped her eyes. I have insurance through QuickMart. It's not great, but it's something. I just need to understand what it covers, what I'll have to pay out of pocket, so I can plan, so I can budget. Dr. Patel nodded. We'll have our financial counselor come talk to you. We'll figure out exactly what your costs will be and what assistance programs you might qualify for. Malcolm stepped out into the hallway. He called Rebecca. I need you to look into something. Healthcare costs for chronic conditions. What does good insurance actually cover versus what patients end up paying? I want real numbers, not the glossy brochures, the actual experience. Okay. Why? Because I'm learning that helping one family isn't enough. I need to understand the whole system so I can actually change it. He hung up and went back inside. Jerome was being moved to a regular room for overnight observation. Delilah went with him. Caleb followed, holding his mother's hand. Imani stayed behind with Malcolm. She's right, you know, Imani said. You can't just pay for everything. I know. But you want to help. Yes. Then fix it so other kids don't end up here because their parents couldn't afford regular checkups. Fix it so families don't have to choose between seeing a doctor and paying rent. Malcolm looked down at this 9-year-old who kept teaching him lessons he should have learned years.
How do I do that? I don't know all the answers, but I know you need to talk to more people. Not just people in boardrooms, people in waiting rooms. People who've had to choose between insulin and groceries. People who understand what it's actually like. Will you help me find them? If you promise to really listen, I promise. 3 weeks later, Jerome came home with insulin, a blood sugar monitor, and the care plan. Delilah had quit QuickMart and taken a job at a clinic that offered better insurance. The pay was slightly less, but the coverage was worth it. Malcolm had spent those 3 weeks talking to families dealing with chronic conditions, learning about medical debt, about insurance gaps, about the impossible choices people made every day. He started another fund, this one for medical expenses, but Rebecca helped him structure it differently. Not charity, a long-term program that covered gaps in insurance, that paid for medications, that provided case managers to help families navigate the system. It wasn't perfect. It didn't fix everything, but it was something. One evening, Malcolm got a call from Imani. Can you come over? I want to show you something. When he arrived, Imani led him to her room. She had a notebook open on her desk, pages and pages of names written in careful handwriting. What's this? Every kid at my school who's like me, who goes hungry sometimes, who has parents working multiple jobs, who needs help. She looked up at him. There are 43 of them, just in my school, and there are 12 elementary schools in this district. Malcolm did the math. Over 500 kids in one district. I can help them, he started to say. No, Imani shook her head. You can help some of them, but you're just one person. Even with all your money, you can't fix everything. You need to change the systems, not just help individuals. How? I don't know, but I think you need to teach other people who have money and power what you learned about seeing people, about listening, about building bridges instead of walls. Malcolm looked at this 9-year-old girl who'd gone from begging for food to teaching billionaires about systemic change in 6 months. When did you get so smart? I've always been smart. You just couldn't see it when I was holding a cardboard sign. She was right. Malcolm had spent his whole life believing success meant climbing as high as you could go. But Imani was teaching him that real success meant reaching back down and pulling others up. Not with handouts, not with charity, but with systemic change that made the ladder easier to climb for everyone. It was going to take more than money. It was going to take work, time, commitment, learning, failing, trying again. I'm going to keep making mistakes, Malcolm said. I know. Will you keep calling me out when I do? Imani smiled. That's what friends do. Friends. Not charity case and benefactor. Not billionaire and poor kid. Friends. Malcolm realized something in that moment. Imani had given him something more valuable than he'd given her. She'd given him the ability to see. And once you see people, really see them, you can never go back to being blind. 6 months after Jerome's diagnosis, Malcolm was invited to speak at the National Business Leaders Conference in Chicago. He almost said no. These conferences were full of people like he used to be. Billionaires who believed their wealth meant they'd earned the right to tell everyone else how to live. People who thought poverty was a personal failure instead of a systemic design. But Rebecca convinced him to go. You have a platform now. People are watching what you're doing. If you can convince even a few of them to change how they treat workers, that's thousands more families helped. So Malcolm went. The conference was held at a hotel that charged $800 a night for a room, the kind of place where bottled water cost $12, and everyone pretended that was normal. Malcolm was scheduled to speak on the second day, a panel about corporate responsibility and worker satisfaction. He sat backstage listening to the other panelists. A tech CEO talked about adding a ping pong table to the break room, called it investment in employee wellness. A retail executive bragged about giving workers an extra 15-minute break, said it showed the company cared. A real estate developer explained how they'd started offering financial literacy classes to minimum wage employees to teach them how to budget better on poverty wages. Malcolm felt sick. When it was his turn, he walked onto the stage. The moderator smiled at him. Mr. Sterling, your company has made some radical changes in the past year. $25 minimum wage, extensive benefits, tenant protections. Some people are calling you a visionary. Others say you're destroying capitalism. What do you say to that? Malcolm looked out at the audience. Hundreds of wealthy people in expensive suits. People who could change thousands of lives with a single decision.
I say I was blind for 20 years, Malcolm began. I built a fortune while people who worked for me couldn't afford to eat. I built towers while families who lived in my buildings couldn't afford rent. I called myself self-made while ignoring all the people whose labor actually made my success possible. The room went quiet. I'm not a visionary. I'm someone who finally saw what I'd been ignoring. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. He told them about Imani, about standing outside his building with a cardboard sign, about her mother working 3 jobs for poverty wages, about her father dying in Malcolm's warehouse because safety reports were ignored. The changes I made weren't about being nice. They were about stopping harm. There's a difference. You can't pat yourself on the back for adding a ping pong table while paying people so little they qualify for food stamps. That's not corporate responsibility. That's exploitation with better branding. The moderator looked uncomfortable. But, Mr. Sterling, surely you acknowledge that businesses have to remain profitable. Sterling Tech is more profitable now than before I made changes. Our stock is higher. Our productivity is higher. Turns out, people work better when they can afford to eat and aren't worried about losing their housing. A man in the front row stood up.
Malcolm recognized him. David Brennan, CEO of Brennan Industries, worth about $12 billion. "You're making us all look bad," Brennan said. Not a question, an accusation. "Good." "Excuse me? If treating workers like human beings makes you look bad, then you should look bad. The question isn't why I'm doing this. The question is why you're not." Brennan's face went red. "You have no idea what you're talking about. Running a business is complicated. There are shareholders to answer to, competitors to worry about. You can't just throw money at workers and expect—" "I'm not throwing money at workers. I'm paying them what their labor is actually worth. There's a difference." Another executive stood up. "What you're doing is unsustainable. You're setting expectations that other companies can't meet. You're going to create problems across entire industries." "Good," Malcolm said again. "Industries that depend on poverty wages deserve to have problems. They deserve to be disrupted, because the current system is designed to keep people poor while making people like us richer. And that's not sustainable either. It's just slower to collapse." The room erupted. Half the people were arguing. The other half were walking out. Malcolm stood on the stage and watched them leave. He didn't care. After the panel, Malcolm went back to his hotel room. His phone was already blowing up. Text messages from board members, emails from business partners. Everyone wanted to know what he was thinking, why he'd attacked other CEOs so publicly. Malcolm was reading through the messages when someone knocked on his door. He looked through the peephole. David Brennan was standing in the hallway. Malcolm opened the door. "Come to tell me I'm destroying my reputation?" "No." Brennan walked in. He looked tired, older than his 52 years. "I came to ask you a question." "What?" "Did you mean it? What you said about being blind?" Malcolm studied him. "Yes, I meant it." Brennan sat down heavily in the chair by the window. "I have a daughter. She's 23. College educated, working full-time at a marketing firm. She can't afford her own apartment. She lives with 3 roommates in a place where the heat doesn't work half the time. She has a master's degree, and she can't afford basic health care." He looked up at Malcolm. "And I never thought about it. Not really. I thought that's just how it is for young people starting out, that she'd work her way up like I did. But you can't work your way up anymore. Now when entry-level jobs pay $30,000 a year and rent costs $24,000, the math doesn't work." "No," Malcolm said quietly, "it doesn't." "How did you see it? How did you finally understand?" "A 9-year-old girl looked me in the eye and refused to let me look away. She made me see her, really see her. And once I saw her, I saw everyone else I'd been ignoring." Brennan was quiet for a long time. "I don't know if I can do what you did, change my whole company, risk my stock price, deal with the board." "Then start smaller. Talk to your workers. Actually listen to them. Find out what they're struggling with. You might be surprised. Or I might not want to know. That's the real question, isn't it? Do you want to keep being blind because it's comfortable? Or are you willing to see even if it means you have to change?" Brennan stood up. "I don't know yet, but I'm thinking about it. That's more than I was doing yesterday." He left. Malcolm sat alone in his hotel room and thought about all the David Brennans out there. All the wealthy people who might change if someone just showed them how. If someone refused to let them look away. His phone rang. Imani's number. "Hi," I answered. "How are you?" "I'm good. I saw a video of your speech. Someone posted it online. It has like 2 million views already." "That's good or bad?" "Good, I think. People are arguing about it in the comments. Some people are mad, but some people are saying you're right, that companies should pay workers more."
"I think you made people uncomfortable."
That's good.
"Comfortable people don't change."
Malcolm smiled.
"When did you become so wise?" "I told you I was always wise. You just couldn't see it before." They talked for a few more minutes. About school, about Jerome's diabetes management, about normal things. When Malcolm hung up, he felt lighter. He'd made enemies today. Powerful enemies. People who could make his business life difficult. But he'd also planted seeds. Made people think.
made people question whether the way things were was the way things had to be. And maybe that was worth more than being popular. Malcolm flew back to Detroit the next morning. When he got to his office, Rebecca was waiting with her laptop. "You need to see this." She pulled up a news article. Brennan Industries announces wage increases and benefits expansion. Malcolm's eyes widened. David Brennan? Posted this morning, he's raising minimum wage to $22 an hour across all locations, adding healthcare benefits for part-time workers. He gave an interview saying he was inspired by your example. One company. That's thousands of workers. It's more than one. Rebecca pulled up another article. 3 more companies announced similar changes today. They're all citing your speech, saying if Sterling Tech can be profitable and ethical, they can too. Malcolm sat down. This is bigger than I thought. It's going viral, your speech. People are calling it the accountability moment. Business schools are already talking about adding it to their curriculum. I didn't say anything revolutionary, I just told the truth. Sometimes the truth is revolutionary. Malcolm's phone buzzed. An unknown number. Mr. Sterling, my name is Patricia Chen. You met my grandmother when Imani showed you around the neighborhood. I'm a graduate student studying economics at University of Michigan. I'm writing my thesis on wage inequality and corporate responsibility. I'd like to interview you. Would you be willing to talk? Malcolm texted back. Yes? When and where? More messages came in. From reporters, from activists, from workers at other companies asking if you could help them organize for better wages. From people who'd been invisible, finally seen. Malcolm thought about Imani's drawing, the bridge between the tower and the street. He'd thought he was building that bridge by himself. But he was wrong. The bridge was built by everyone who chose to see, everyone who chose to listen, everyone who chose to change. He was just one person walking across it. Rebecca's phone rang. She answered, listened, then her face went pale. Malcolm, turn on the news. Channel 7. Malcolm grabbed the remote and turned on the TV mounted on his office wall. The news anchor was speaking. Breaking news this afternoon. The Justice Department has announced an investigation into Sterling Properties following allegations of housing discrimination and unsafe working conditions dating back 15 years. The investigation was prompted by an anonymous whistleblower who came forward with documents showing a pattern of ignored safety reports and discriminatory rental practices. Malcolm's blood went cold. Sources say the investigation will examine the warehouse collapse that killed 3 workers in 2019, including allegations that Sterling Properties knowingly ignored structural safety concerns. The screen showed a photo of Marcus Davis, Imani's father. Federal prosecutors are requesting all internal documents related to property management and workplace safety protocols. If violations are found, Sterling could face criminal charges in addition to civil penalties. Rebecca muted the TV. Malcolm. I know. This is about Marcus. About the safety reports we ignored. About all the decisions I signed off on without looking at them. You didn't know. I should have known. That's the point. I should have been paying attention. His phone rang. His lawyer. Malcolm, we need to talk. Now. The investigation took 2 years. Federal prosecutors went through every document, every email, every safety report that had been filed and ignored, every rental application that had been denied for discriminatory reasons. They found everything. Sterling Properties had violated safety regulations at 17 different locations, had ignored over 40 formal safety complaints, had discriminatory rental practices at 32 buildings. The fines were massive. $400 million in civil penalties, criminal charges against 3 former property managers who'd knowingly ignored safety violations. Malcolm wasn't charged criminally, But the civil penalties nearly bankrupted Sterling Properties. He had to sell off half his real estate holdings to pay the fines and settlements. His personal net worth dropped from $8 billion to $3 billion. He should have been devastated. Instead, he felt relief. Because the investigation forced him to see everything he'd missed, every corner that had been cut, every person who'd been harmed, every decision made in the name of profit without considering the human cost. And it gave him the chance to make it right. Really right. Not just helping one family, but changing the entire way Sterling Properties
New management, new protocols, independent safety inspections, tenant advocacy boards, fair housing practices with oversight. It took 3 years to rebuild. 3 years of work, of learning, of failing and trying again. But slowly, Sterling Properties became what Malcolm had always claimed it was: ethical, responsible, built on principles instead of just profit. And now, 5 years after he'd first seen Imani standing outside his building, Malcolm was standing in a very different place. Wayne State University. Outdoor graduation ceremony. Late spring. The sun was warm. The sky was clear. Malcolm sat in the guest section. He wasn't the speaker today. He was just here to watch. The graduates filed onto the field in their caps and gowns. Hundreds of them. All different ages, all different backgrounds. The nursing school graduates were called first. Malcolm leaned forward. Delilah Marie Davis. She walked across the stage, 37 years old, nursing scrubs under her graduation gown, a stethoscope around her neck that she'd worn for the photo because she was proud of it. She'd done it. Finished her degree while working part-time at the clinic, while raising 3 kids, while managing Jerome's diabetes, while dealing with all the normal chaos of life. She'd done it. Malcolm stood up and applauded. He wasn't the only one. The whole section around him was standing, cheering. Delilah's eyes found them in the crowd. She smiled. A real smile. The kind that reached her eyes. The kind that showed joy instead of just exhaustion. When the ceremony ended, Malcolm made his way through the crowd. He found Delilah surrounded by her family. Jerome was 11 now, healthy, his diabetes well managed. He was wearing a soccer jersey. His team had won the city championship last month. Caleb was 9, Imani's age when Malcolm first met her. He was reading a book while everyone talked around him, some fantasy novel about dragons. And Imani, 14 years old now, taller, hair still in braids but styled differently. She wore a volunteer t-shirt from the community food bank where she worked every weekend. She saw Malcolm and smiled. "Mr. Sterling, did you see? Mama graduated!" "I saw. I'm so proud of her." Delilah walked over. Someone had given her flowers. She looked overwhelmed in the best way. "Congratulations," Malcolm said. "You did it." "We did it," Delilah corrected. "I couldn't have done this without help, without being seen, without someone caring enough to make things possible. You would have found the way. You're the strongest person I know." "Maybe, but it would have taken longer, and I might not have survived it." She looked at her kids. They might not have survived it. Jerome ran up. "Mom, can we go celebrate now? You promised pizza." "Yes, baby, we can go celebrate." The family headed toward the parking lot. Imani hung back. "You coming with us?" she asked Malcolm. "We're going to that pizza place on Woodward, the one with the arcade." "I don't want to intrude on family time." "Your family too. Not in the traditional way, but in the way that matters." Malcolm felt something warm in his chest. "Okay, I'll come." They went to the pizza place. It was loud and chaotic and perfect. Kids running around playing arcade games, adults talking and laughing, normal life happening all around them. Malcolm sat in a booth with Delilah and Imani while the boys played skee-ball. "I start at Detroit Medical Center next month," Delilah said. "Pediatric unit, real salary, benefits, retirement plan, everything I dreamed about." "You're going to be amazing," Malcolm said. "I'm going to help people. That's all they ever wanted, to make a difference." "You already make a difference. You raised 3 incredible kids while surviving impossible circumstances. That's making a difference." Delilah smiled.
Imani's a special one, though. She's going to change the world. Imani rolled her eyes. Mom, stop. It's true. You're already changing it. That food bank you volunteer at, they told me you've organized 3 new donation drives. You're 14. People need food. I know what that's like. So I help. Just like you taught me. See the need, then help fill it. I think you taught me that, not the other way around. They ate pizza and played arcade games and talked about normal things. About Jerome's soccer. About Caleb's obsession with dragons. About Imani's high school plans. About life. When Malcolm left that evening, Imani walked him to his car. Thank you, she said, for everything. For seeing me, for helping my family, for changing. Thank you for teaching me how to see. Are you still helping people, building bridges? Every day. It's harder than I thought. Slower. I make mistakes constantly, but I'm trying. That's all anyone can do. Try. And keep trying even when it's hard. Malcolm looked at this 14-year-old who'd been 9 years old and hungry when he first seen her, who taught him more about humanity than all his years of business school and board meetings. What do you want to be when you grow up? A social worker. I want to help families like mine. Families that fall through the cracks. I want to make sure no kid has to stand in the cold asking for help like I did. You're going to be incredible at it. I know. She said it without arrogance, just confidence, just truth. Malcolm drove back to his apartment that night. It was smaller now. He'd sold the penthouse. Didn't need that much space. Didn't need the reminder of who he used to be. He had a small place, 2 bedrooms. One for him, one for the files and documents from all the families he was working with now. He stood at the window looking out at the city. It looked different than it had 5 years ago. Not because the city had changed, but because he could see it differently. He saw the people now, the struggles, the families working multiple jobs, the kids who went to bed hungry, the systems that kept people trapped, and
Not just by him, by Delilah, who would help heal sick children, by Imani, who would fight for families, by David Brennan and the other executives who'd started changing their companies, by Patricia Chen and the students studying how to build better economic systems, by everyone who chose to see instead of looking away. Malcolm's phone buzzed. A text from Imani. It was a photo, the drawing she'd made 5 years ago. The one with Sterling Tower and the little girl and the rainbow bridge between them. Below the photo she'd written, "You kept your promise. You didn't forget. Thank you." Malcolm looked at the drawing, at the bridge connecting 2 worlds that should never have been separated. And he thought about the lesson Imani had taught him. That poverty wasn't a personal failure. It was a system designed to keep people poor while making others rich. That children shouldn't have to solve adult problems. That a 9-year-old standing in the cold asking for food was a society failing its most vulnerable. That wealth almost always came at someone else's expense. That his billions were built on the labor of people paid poverty wages. That seeing was the first step to change. That he'd had the power to help all along. He just hadn't been willing to look. That restitution mattered more than charity. That changing systems was harder, but more important than helping individuals. That we're all connected. That the billionaire in the tower and the child on the street weren't separate worlds. They're connected by economics and policy and shared humanity. And that it was never too late to choose differently. To choose truth over comfort, courage over cowardice, even if it cost everything you thought you needed. Malcolm saved the photo and set it as his phone wallpaper, so he'd see it every day. So he'd remember. Because once you see someone, really see them, you can never go back to pretending they're invisible. And Malcolm Sterling was done being blind. If this story changed how you see wealth, poverty, and responsibility in America, share it. Subscribe to Top Core for more true stories that reveal uncomfortable truths. Because the next Imani is standing somewhere right now,
asking to be seen. The question is, will you look or will you turn away? This story reveals painful truths about wealth inequality, systemic poverty, and the hidden cost of success in America. Poverty is not a personal failure. Delilah worked 3 jobs and still couldn't afford food. The system was designed to keep her poor, not help her succeed. Children shouldn't have to solve adult problems. Imani was 9 years old, trying to feed her family. That's not resilience. That's society failing its most vulnerable. Wealth often comes at someone else's expense. Malcolm's billions were built on low wages, unsafe conditions, and displaced families. Success isn't self-made. It's built on others' labor. Seeing is the first step to change. Malcolm had the power to help all along. He just hadn't been willing to look until he looked a hungry child in the eyes. Restitution matters more than charity. Malcolm didn't just give money. He changed the systems that created poverty. That's the difference between helping one person and helping thousands. We're all connected. The billionaire in the tower and the child on the street aren't separate worlds. They're connected by economics, policy, and humanity. In our own lives, we must ask, who are we not seeing? Whose labor makes our comfort possible? What bridges can we build between different realities? When we have power, are we using it to build up or push down? The answer determines what kind of society we create, and whether the next Imani has to stand in the cold, hungry, and alone, or can simply be a child.